Bonsoir et bienvenue à l'Institut français d'Écosse. I'm particularly pleased to welcome you tonight as the head of the French Institute and Consul General. I think it's one of the first events where we host so many people, and thank you very much for this. We also have an excellent technician, and it's very impressive to see all this and all of you here tonight. I also want to thank, we have the honor and the pleasure to have a French member of parliament representing French citizens abroad. Merci, Monsieur le Député, for your interest and for being with us tonight. And of course, thank you, the panel and the moderator, for accepting to speak tonight and to be with us and to illuminate us on the subjects that we've chosen. So tonight we are having a talk. It's called the Night of Ideas. That's a night that's being organized in more than 100 cities, French institutes, embassies, and each year at the end of January. It should have been on the 27th, but because of restrictions and the situation, we organize it today. And there's a common theme that's been decided. This year, it's rebuilding together. Of course, you understand that it's particularly well chosen after 2 years almost of COVID and being through Zoom and Visio. And the objective of this night is not to have any objective, just to exchange, to discuss, to talk. Hence, the name of the Night of Ideas is to have everyone exchanging, everyone talking, having discussions without any purpose of minutes or anything, just for the fun of it, and also for all that everyone can bring and take from this evening. So I'm sure you will enjoy yourself, I hope so. Under the theme Rebuilding Together, of course, this is really wide. Here in Edinburgh, we've decided to focus on culture. Of course, culture is very important. It's also a very important aspect in Scotland, and it's very crucial and at the center of the Franco-Scottish relationship. So, rebuilding together, Assa will explain who's in the panel, but we thought it would be interesting to see how artists during that period lived during COVID, and how you rebuild, you recreate after being 2 years apart. And I think we all need a lot of creativity these days, and also respecting the environment and bringing forward a world that will be more sustainable and also more appealing, maybe, to everyone. So I hope you'll enjoy it. Have a nice evening, and do not hesitate. It will be in English, as I will explain everything, but I think you can also ask your questions in French, if you prefer. It's a live event, so it's being live streamed, yes. And there will be also a possibility for people not with us tonight to ask questions through a chat. The last thing I should not forget, in case of fire, and we hope there won't be any, you've got 2 exit doors, the main one and the one at the back. And please keep your mask on, that's just for you know why. Thank you very much again, and enjoy your evening.
Thank you very much, Laurence, and thank you for having me. Thank you for having us tonight in this beautiful building that is the French Institute in Scotland. Hello and welcome to all of you at the French Institute event as part of the annual Night of Ideas. I am Assa Samaké-Roman. I'm a French journalist based here in Edinburgh, covering Scottish politics, society, culture, you name it, for the French and Scottish media. I'm also the author of a book in French about Scotland. I produce a podcast in French about Scotland with my friend here, Sarah. and we are, with a bunch of other great French folks here in Scotland, working on the launch of a magazine called La Revue Écossaise, so stay tuned for that. Every year, La Nuit des Idées invites us to celebrate the sharing of knowledge and ideas between countries and cultures around the world, encompassing all disciplines in art and science alike, in order to listen to those who are taking the conversation forward in all fields. It's an opportunity to reflect on the major issues of our time. So tonight, I'm delighted to chair this discussion around the idea of rebuilding together, and more specifically about creativity and making the most of making. Tonight we'll hear the enlightened views of our excellent panel. To my right, Belocine Musolo, the French and Congolese fashion designer behind Neftali Couture, based in Air. Inspired by Belocine's double culture, Neftali Couture offers modern and fashionable dresses and skirts for women, and elegant bow ties and pocket squares for men, with the beautiful use, as you can see, of African print. Every product is handmade with love. To my left, John Thorne is sustainability coordinator at the Glasgow School of Art, the ideal place, he says, for a committed environmentalist to explore the big issues facing our society. John believes we must systematically redesign our lives, utilizing all disciplines to take meaningful action against all the major crises in our world, such as the climate crisis, including with arts. And finally, Barrington Reeves is the founder of Two Gallus, a Glasgow-based creative agency operating at the cross-section of design and culture for clients all around the globe, including some of the biggest brands in the world. Barrington is also one of the organizers of the Black Lives Matter movement here in Scotland and launched the Black Scottish Business Fund in 2020. So thank you all for sharing the stage with me, and thank you all for attending tonight in person and online. You'll be able to ask questions at the end of this discussion. So we're going to divide this discussion in three parts, talking about where we come from, where we are now, and where we're going. So I would like for us to reflect really on the beginning of the pandemic. As the physical world was paused during the coronavirus crisis, we saw many shifts and many things changing. Industries had to reinvent themselves to survive. Global populations tuned into virtual worlds for connection and entertainment. Barrington, I want to start with you. Did that mean this whole period that creativity has been set free because there were no limitations that the physical world usually imposes on us?
Yes and no. I think in part, definitely it opened up a new world, but it definitely provided a learning experience, and that many people who were not ready to step into that world were instantly thrust into it. So where we would normally see kind of early uptakers, Gen Z, younger generations kind of ahead of the curve on this type of thing, suddenly your largest FTSE 100 blue chip company who've always operated in pen and paper, have never wanted to take any of their business into an online realm in that way, suddenly had to change and adapt. So although it was a great time for creativity, it was overshadowed by industry and a world trying to adapt and change so quickly to move everything they can, all their communications, all their design and facilitations into digital.
Belocine, what kind of adaptations did you have to make to keep your business, to allow your creativity still to be expressed?
So I make clothing, and during the pandemic, people weren't going outside anymore, so they didn't purchase much clothes. So I had to adapt and find a way to still make my part and create. And what I did was making face masks, and I sold a lot of them because it was really needed at the time. So that's how I survived during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. John, has the pandemic highlighted the necessity and the omnipresence of creative thought all around us? For example, the things we use for work, the things we wear, the things we use for leisure, for our family, to protect ourselves, to be more efficient, etc., etc. It's not here by chance. Someone had to rethink through it and, thoroughly to make it exist in the real world. So do you think this crisis has highlighted that?
I think it's a burst of creativity we weren't necessarily looking for. And for so many people I know, it's been a horrible experience. And certainly we were all sent home that day in March, just left our offices, students left their studios, and we're studio based. So every student has a studio space to use as they want. And you have students using big canvases and suddenly they're in their flat all alone. And what do you do? So it has meant reinvention, it has meant rethinking the curriculum, and we've embraced the online like everyone else, and I'm sick of the online like everyone else. But it's given us great things. We've had international speakers that we would never have had at the Glasgow School of Art before. We've had people dialing in from Mauritius to do workshops, that sort of thing. So there's been opportunities, but as an environmentalist, I was really waiting for the environmental disaster to come along and for the emergency to start. And lo and behold, COVID comes along and we have a health emergency, which may be linked to environmental issues anyway. But so I was kind of mentally half prepared for it. But I think it's really hit a lot of creative people because, especially as an art school, you're there to interact. And you can see it as the students start coming back now. You're there to actually, half the art is actually just mixing with people and getting that vibe and getting the ideas from other folk. So it's been isolating for a lot of artists, I imagine, and a lot of designers.
So as you said, it was a challenging time for creatives, people who are used to work in studios, used to interacting with real people face to face, really. And it couldn't happen at the height of the pandemic. How did creatives rise to the challenge? What did you see that was really interesting among your students, for example?
Well, I think we started doing projects across years and across disciplines, which wasn't really that possible when it was in person because everyone was stuck in their studios. So that changed. I think students and staff are more used to, designers working with artists, working with architects. So there have been some creative positives, but also, as you probably know, it's twice the work to do things online sometimes. It's twice the stress. So I wouldn't say I wouldn't have wished it for the world, but we've had to adapt, and those artists who are perhaps working on big canvases have had to think, well, what can I find in my flat to work with? We've had students going out and saying, what can you find within a kilometre of your house when you couldn't travel, and what can you do with that? So it's certainly been shaken us up, probably like every institution, I think, and made us think a bit more about who we are and what we do. And at the end of the day, you're stripped away from your job. This is why so many people have changed their jobs, I think, because suddenly you're sat in the spare room, with all the boxes and all the rubbish of your house around you, and your job is stripped back to the bare minimum. And that's when you realise, what you're doing and how worthwhile your job is and how meaningful your job is. And that's been a revelation for a lot of people, I think.
Belocine, I'm interested in hearing about your experience as well. As you said, because we're all locked inside our homes, we weren't really buying new clothes to go out, and your creativity, your work is about real life as well and real clothes that people are wearing. So, did you have to question the way you work during this pandemic? Has it inspired you to do new things beyond face masks and just to produce different things?
So I don't have a studio at the moment. I do my work in my living room, basically. And it was a time for me to focus on my online business because all we had was online. And what I was really appreciative of is the people were more keen to buy locally. There were more community, and that's how I could go through this, because many people were buying from me because they knew I am based in Air and I do everything in Air. And even my fabric and everything that I need, like small accessories, I buy it locally from shops in Edinburgh and stuff like that. So I had to adapt. I also had to focus on my website, make sure that my website was appealing and easy to go shop in there. And yes, this is what I did. Because I work from home and I am a person who likes to stay at home. It was okay. I didn't have a hard time during this season, and it allowed me to rethink and rebuild my business plan and what I wanted to do and what I wanted to achieve as well. So it was interesting for me.
Barrington, what about you? So I guess working with clients everywhere in the world, maybe you were probably ahead of us already. You were already doing a lot of things online and living and working quite differently.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our ecosystem is online. But like I said, for us, and to echo that point, it was a kind of forced change. And I think the best creativity comes when you have time to plan and it's done from a nice headspace. And unfortunately, at that time, what we were getting hit with was our business is going to lose 500 million over the next 6 months if you can't make our online systems as robust as our in-person systems. And yeah, I think we're definitely approaching design and creativity from a different point of view at that point. I think sometimes our design treads the line between design and functional and art, and that's like a really beautiful space for us to be operating in, to be creating things that are not just functional and work for a business but are lovely and have some soul to them. And at that point it really drastically shifted to, no, this just has to be something that works. It has to get out, it has to generate sales, it has to create a pipeline. But then again, going back to what you said, it really did kind of ignite this spark within people, and people who were sitting at home, like, were suddenly kind of forced to look at themselves in a mirror, like sit in a room like that they've maybe never spent more than 3 or 4 hours in if they weren't asleep, and look around and think, is this what I really want for my life? So suddenly all your friends were starting up baking businesses, or they were printing t-shirts, or they were making accessories. And I think within the creative industries, it was a huge hamstring. It was something that if we wanted to take those processes and look at how we would have rolled them out, I would have like 10 or 15 years to get there, and we were made to do it in kind of 6 months to a year. But on the flip side, it was so amazing to see all these people who probably had their creative dream curbed when they were 13 or 14 because their mum or dad said, no, you're going to go and be a lawyer, or you're going to go and do finance. And suddenly they're sitting in their like box room in London like, this is kind of not what I thought it was going to be. And you found those people actually did get into it, and they loved it, and they lit up with creativity. And yeah, it's been great. I think there's been a lot of really nice projects that have come out of the back of that. So that was definitely one advantage. But yeah, I think in that we were fairly ahead, it was good that we could pick up and run with it quite fast, and it did allow us to do things that we would never have done before. Suddenly you were open up to like international markets in a way that you never were. It really created a kind of global economy for creativity. You'll find a lot of big companies, no matter how amazing you are, they still want to work with someone that's really close to them. And that kind of really just broke. I think that was like the last link. It broke, and people were now so open to working with people all around the world, whether that's freelancers, employers. We're now seeing like 100 people strong creative agencies where they have no base. They're all remote. They all work on Slack and Teams and Zoom. And it's amazing because that is really that's just opened up huge lanes for lots of people, and especially people in kind of marginalized communities. I think it's been great there because you're looking at the best jobs in design and creativity. You're talking about having to fly to the fashion capitals of the world or the industry capitals of the world, like London, Tokyo, Paris, New York, and these are expensive places to live. And usually it was found that the people that could afford to go and live there and make the connections there were the people getting jobs, not just based on the merit of their work. And I think we've actually seen now quite a nice shift towards that. I mean, it could still go further, and I think there will always be an element of privilege and contact there, but we've definitely seen a shift towards people being open to the idea of it doesn't matter where you live or who you are. If your work is good enough, there's now a company that will hire you. So I think that's a great takeaway from what's happened.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's a great transition to my next question, because as you said, technology is more accessible now. There are tools that we can all use in our homes, in our computers, on our phones. Especially the new generation, Gen Z, they're amazing at creating, remixing on apps. I don't know about you, but during this pandemic, I've spent an unfathomable amount of time on TikTok. And I mean, what these young people are doing is absolutely amazing. So does that mean that, we could all be creative, that we all have that in ourselves, and, this is like a new dawn for creativity? What do you think, John?
Hopefully not in the metaverse.
We're going to come to that later.
I'm jumping ahead. Yes, I think it's about choosing the technology that we think is meaningful and useful to use, rather than using technology for technology's sake. And I know quite a few young people and students who are coming off things like social media now. They want the interaction, especially after 2 years of sat in their bedrooms, looking at a screen, trying to do their classes like that. So I think it's being selective and seeing what works, and we have to be mature enough as a humanity to actually say, well, we can do this, but we don't really want to do that, do we? And I think that's the right approach to take. It's been a great boon, and amazing how it's opened up something like the design business. But I think we have to be careful with what we choose to get involved in. So there's some good things out there, but I think we have to be careful.
Belocine?
For me, when TikTok appeared, I was like, this is for kids, I'm never going to use it. But then the pandemic happened, and I spent a lot of time on it too.
I mean, this is always how things start. Like, I never did that, and then the pandemic happened. And I changed my mind completely.
Yes, and I actually started to be creative on those apps as well, because I think people like to see what I do. It's not only the clothes, but it's also how I wear it. It's also how I make it. I want to be transparent about the process because I do everything myself. So I use those apps, and I think that it's a great tool. And even for my business, it was really helpful, especially Instagram and TikTok, because this is where it's like my billboard where I can show everything, every product. So it was really interesting. And I hope that in the future, we will keep on using those apps and getting involved in it. Yes.
Barrington?
Yeah, I would echo that. I think that these apps, like, they definitely have an insidious side to them, and you have to be careful about how much faith you put in them, but they are also amazing tools for young creatives, and they've created platforms that have never existed before. I also think when you kind of look and split out how different generations digest content, it's very easy to write off a platform like TikTok as like, this is for kids, I would never get involved in this. But the reality is they just don't use media and consume media in the same way that we do. The attention span is so short. They're not interested in the high-end, very polished finish that, like, if you break it down, you've got your millennials or your kind of baby boomers on Facebook who want to see kind of day in the life, 80 photo upload after the family holiday. Then you've got kind of our generation, and mostly here I assume are going to be on your Instagram, and we kind of favor the polished kind of fakeness almost. It's weird that we've bought into that, but we're all about kind of filters and the perfectly placed coffee mug on the table in the morning with the book. And was that the reality, or was there like 10 kids running around mental and they kind of curated 5 minutes of like stillness in this one photo for their perfect life? But yeah, I think Gen Z have taken TikTok and they've made it their platform, and it goes. It's a very different world. But yeah, we're starting to see how that can take off now, and it's not been commercialized in the same way that Facebook has yet, which I think is great, because I think people are still there kind of creating and kind of putting out content in quite an authentic and genuine way. Now that will be superseded soon, and that people will find a way to commercialize it better. Brands are just rubbish at it right now, but when they get good, it will go the same way. But yeah, I think it has created a nice platform in that everyone now has an opportunity to kind of get creative, and what a great end creative is. The context of that has changed. So while someone my age might think an amazingly shot kind of photograph on a DSLR camera that's been edited down and I've spent time color grading it is like the best it can be, someone who's 17 wants to see someone like dance in a nice outfit, and I can't disagree with them just because that's my point of view. I was born and raised in a different time, and how I consume media and what I want to see is different from them. So I think we have to be open to learning and adapting and taking on board the next generation's iteration of what we have.
How much of what changed in the past couple of years do you think is here to stay? Because very quickly after the beginning of the pandemic, people were talking about building back better, but sometimes it really meant going back to the way things were. So what do you think? Are we just, having this irreversible movement forward, or do you think that actually we're going to soon start to see and do things as we used to do?
I'm not sure what's changed fundamentally with the system. I think we've lived in a broken capitalist system for so long now, so based on fossil fuels that really fuel inequality, and it's been such an inequitable world for so long. And I think we've just been locked up for a while, and now we're coming back. So I'm under no illusions that people, for example, are going to get back on planes and go on holidays, and I don't blame them for that. Because in my world, the planes wouldn't exist. We would have a more environmentally friendly way of getting around. And they're going to get back in their cars, and they're going to go off traveling, and they're going to go back to a lot of their old ways. So when we're thinking about how do we get back from this, we have to think about how to make a more socially just world, I think. There's not much point in saving the world environmentally if we don't actually think about race inequalities, about gender inequalities, and all the rest of the characteristics. And that's something that I don't see in the planning at the moment. But I think, if we suffer more of these sort of COVID-type bugs, and it wasn't the disaster or the emergency I thought was around the corner, I think we are going to have to adapt. We are going to have to work together as a species better. And although I'm a bit of a Luddite, I think when it comes to technology, I think that will play a role, and it'll be about choosing what technology we use.
Belocine?
For me, I would say that I believe that the technology that we have today has helped us, and how to say that? I think that it will stay, and for example, everything that has been done remotely. Before, we were, in many companies, we were, I don't find the word in English, but like...
Say it in French.
On était assez réticents par rapport aux technologies, par rapport à travailler en ligne, par rapport à avoir everything that is remote. We were a bit scared of it, maybe. But this season or this period has shown that we are able to work through this. We are able to use those tools, and we can make something out of it. And we are as efficient as if we are, face to face. So I think that many things will remain, and technology should remain. And I think we should keep that. But in the same time, not rely on this only, because seeing people face to face, the human contact is still very important. And yes, I think it's important. And also, what I wanted to say is, I think the technology and everything that has happened during this season has bring also awareness about the environment, about the injustice, about all those things. So I hope that we will, continue in this way.
Do you want to add something, Barrington?
Yeah, I would widely agree in that I think we have kind of created these agile systems now, and that industries and companies have got used to it. And I think now that they realize they actually can hire maybe the best person in the world without having to pay their expenses to move halfway around the world and pay for their flights and pay to put them up, because that used to be the cost to hire the best in the world. They can now hire that person remotely. I think systems like that are going to stay. But yeah, I think also the last 2 years has highlighted just how kind of crucial human interaction is for us at a personal level. And I think when I look at design now and kind of what the future of design and technology looks like, it is like, how can we build a more equitable future within a design and technology landscape, and what can we be doing with technology to kind of push that conversation forward, rather than letting, like you're saying, a broken capitalist future steer it, because that is essentially what will happen if we let it. If we let the boat drive itself, it will head towards what is best for commerce. And I think we as designers have the chance now to kind of to steer it in the right direction.
We were all talking about inequalities, exclusion, the fact that before the pandemic in the old world. It was difficult when you came from marginalized communities to engage really with creativity and the creative world, actually. So to build back better, how do we make sure that we actually include everybody and we talk to everybody and we bring a fragmented society together? Do you want to start, Barrington?
Yeah, I think that is something that the future generation are just going to lead us on. I honestly believe that for the most part, the kind of millennials, baby boomers, that the ship has sailed. Injustice is ingrained in what they believe and what they know. But we are now been faced with a new generation who handles social justice like nothing we could have ever comprehended. They are lightning fast. And the fact that that came at a cross-section with COVID is really why we started to see movements like the Black Lives Matter movement pick up so much steam so quickly. It wasn't that everyone suddenly cared about black people, let's not kid on. It's that suddenly everyone was online and existing in a digital space, and the community and the generation that owned that space cared so much about it that you could not maneuver, you couldn't look any way without someone from that generation telling you what you should care about. And that created a kind of sea change in the way that people thought. And I think that we will start to see that as we go forward, because this generation have so much more economic power. They have so much more kind of influence in a digital and design landscape that companies will always chase what is going to be profitable and who their biggest market is. And there's no doubt that, I mean, to put it into perspective, Gen Z at age 17 have the same spending power as someone who has worked and retired for 60 years. And that's a generation of people, most of them haven't even worked for 3 years or aren't even legal to work yet. So I think we're going to see, just by virtue that we are now stepping into their realm and their land, that companies will be forced to adapt and change very quickly. I mean, I've seen it massively in the last couple of years. So many times I'll get companies coming to me and they're saying, can you do a bit of consultancy for us? Like, we don't look very diverse. Don't know why they always come to me. But yeah, and that is a reaction half through goodwill and half through commerce. I mean, but like, who are we to question? As long as they're doing it, really. But I definitely think what has happened and the kind of knee-jerk reactions that we've seen and the kind of surge of intensity of which it was done has really kind of pushed companies and kind of economies to realise that to do the best they can do, we actually need to build a fair future, and that encompasses everyone.
Belocine, I see you nodding with because you agree apparently with everything that was said. So, did the events that unfolded in the past couple of years, so with the Black Lives Matter movement, protests against sexism and misogyny and violence against women, etc. So there have been a lot of very important conversations, I feel, in the past couple of years. Has it inspired you in your creative practice? Has it informed you, to be a better creative, really?
Yes. I am a Black woman, so the Black Lives Matter subject was really important for me and really personal to me. And I was really happy to see the movement that everybody from any age and any race was speaking about it and denouncing it. So it was inspiring, and also I received a lot of love after this, because people were supporting me and my business, and the fact that I am a woman, a Black woman, and a businesswoman. So it was really interesting. And sorry, can you say the question again?
I was asking you if all these social movements that took place in the past couple of years have inspired you and informed you. I mean, as a citizen, but also as a creative.
Yes. So I want to, at my stage or at my level, I want to share joy, I want to share fairness, I want to share equity. And this is what I do every time that I work and in everything that I create. I want it to be available for anyone from any race, any gender, any size as well. So I am inspired to my everyday work to make sure that everybody is represented, because I have always wanted to be represented as well. And I am glad to see that more and more there is more representation of my community, if I can say like that. So every day I am inspired, and to see how we are going in the right direction makes me really happy. And I really want to continue in that way. And I think that we will achieve that by talking, communicating more and more. The fact that we have the Me Too movement, that we have videos now that can show everything that is happening, helped with the communication, because people can see what's happening, you know. So I think communication is key for developing this.
John, do you believe that art and design can provide answers to the environmental crisis, the democratic crisis, the social crisis that we're experiencing at the moment?
I think I work at an art school because I think art has that power to emotionally connect us. So we walk into a gallery and I was in the National Gallery just now, and you can feel joy, you can laugh, you can feel sad, you can say, I don't like that art, I like it. And it's got that power to emotionally connect us. So I've seen some fantastic art coming from students and from the wider world that connects us to issues. And I've seen pictures of photographic art of things like turtles with fishing nets around them, you know, and that connects me to the fact that if I eat fish, I'm responsible for the nets, and that net around that turtle, I'm partially responsible for that. So I actually think very carefully if I eat fish these days. And I think you can use art like that. You can represent things like sea level rise really graphically. You can represent the loss of rainforest and the death of orangutans. And there's a fantastic, one of my favorite pieces of art is a Greenpeace work, which is a woman's head and it's rainforest being cut down. And it really tries to connect us to the shampoos we use, because all the high street shampoos have palm oil in. And if you use shampoo, you yourself are burning the rainforest and killing orangutans. And that's really powerful, sad stuff. But you know, it's not the Indonesians or the Malaysians, these ex-colonial countries who are struggling to come forward and develop, who are burning their rainforests. It's me using the shampoo. And I think on a wider note, I think you know, people who look and sound like me, and I've been in Scotland for 30 years and I still sound like I'm from Slough, I'm afraid. But people like me designed the world, and we live in a designed world. We think it's our natural place to be, but capitalism was very actually, you know, through trade agreements, through corporations, through the whole mechanisms, folk like me have actually made the world how it is. And that makes me sad, but it also makes me, you know, have some hope, because if we live in a design system, we can actually design our way out of it. And to do that, we need more than the 1% of people who look and sound like me. So diversity for me is the only thing that's going to save humanity. And it's the only thing that's going to, you know, save the lives perhaps of my 2 grandnieces who are 7. Because I'll be dead. You know, I'll probably see droughts and famine and all the rest starting. But, you know, my grandnieces will probably live to be over 100. So they'll really see the full effects of it. So for me, it's a sense of urgency when I go to work, and I go to work angry. I don't know about you guys, but there's a bit of anger when I go to work, and I actually want to take action. I focus that on my work. And I think if you can tackle climate anxiety, if you feel it, by actually doing something meaningful. And you don't have to be a raving environmentalist like me. You know, every sector, this is every designer, every engineer, every historian, every psychologist, and you know, every discipline I can think of can do something. But for me, an art school is that meeting of art and emotional connection and designing a new world, which is really powerful. And I've been there for 9 years, which is unheard of for me.
So I want to end this conversation talking about the future and maybe the next revolutions that are going to come our way. And I have a confession to make. I have a personal obsession with the idea of the metaverse. It sounds like science fiction. It's like the stuff you read in books and you see in films, but actually, apparently, it's coming our way. Big tech companies are investing billions in it, and you know, it's the continuation of our digitalized lives. We did everything online during the pandemic, from work to leisure. I did pub quizzes online. I did brunch online, even. And the metaverse is a global interactive space when you can interact with others and shop, work, watch live events, even live. It could be a game changer on how we socialize, how we create, how we entertain ourselves, how we reach other people. So, Belocine, what do you think of this brave new world? What sort of gut reaction does that trigger in you when you think about the metaverse and we are going to wear, virtual reality headsets? Are you prepared to design clothes for our avatars online?
Of course. To be honest, I have mixed feelings about it. I think that it can be really interesting because you can touch people globally without even going anywhere, just from your home. A bit like what we did for the past 2 years, but to the next level. And I think it's interesting, like for a brand like mine to be known across all UK, for example, that maybe wouldn't happen if I was just, in air. But in the same time, it can be really tricky and really dangerous because it can isolate people and make people, live in a, virtual world. But in their real life, they don't do anything anymore. They don't go out anymore. They don't speak with people anymore. And this can be dangerous. So for me, I have mixed feelings. And I believe that we can have a bit of both, but not all the metaverse.
Mm-hmm. Barrington, I know this is something you're very interested in as well with your creative agency. So can you tell me, can you see the opportunities this could bring or mainly all the ways it could go wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something that we've been focusing on quite a lot recently. I mean, first of all, who here thinks they're on the metaverse? Anyone here that thinks they're on it, put your hand up. Yeah. Most of the rest of you are all wrong. You're all already on it. And what most people understand as the metaverse is totally wrong. The metaverse is not going to be some Oculus headset that Mark Zuckerberg sold you that you plug in and you walk around. Because to do that, we would need quantum processing. You will never be able to stand in a world that looks like a world without a computer processor that can generate that. And that computer does not exist right now. And it's probably 20 or 30 years away. So we're not going to see that. Now, what does exist is Web 3.0, which is what we're seeing right now, which exists. And most of you are part of it. And to feel like that you aren't part of it, or that we aren't already experiencing this, like you were saying, it's like naivety. I mean, look at people almost exist in web. You get Web 2.0 people right now who they log in, your fast fashion influencers, they edit their photos, they edit their face, they buy an outfit just to wear in that photograph, they go and take a photograph outside a nice building so maybe it appears that they are going to an event there or something. So what can you call that but a constructed reality already? Because the chances are they left that place, their face didn't look like that. They didn't actually go to anything there. They returned the clothes, they sat down on their couch and they typed away. But everyone under the comments, oh my God, you look amazing, you must have had so much fun. So they've constructed that reality already. If the metaverse was to exist in the kind of Oculus headset type way, it would probably look a bit like Minecraft. And I don't think you're not gonna get me on that. You're not gonna get John on that. You're probably not gonna get most of us on that. But what you will get is kids on Fortnite watching a Travis Scott concert or watching a Rihanna concert or an Ariana Grande concert. But that's not the future. That's happened. That's how those companies are marketing now. If Travis Scott wants to sell out a show or Ariana Grande wants to sell out a show, why would they go and travel to Houston and New York and Miami when he can just have someone record them in a studio, then plug them in and sell that event to 500 million kids online who will use their parents' credit cards to pay 50 quid for that privilege? And that's happening, and that is the economy that we're dealing with. So Web 3.0 and digital experience is absolutely already here. We're all living in it. It's not something we can escape, unfortunately. You'll be pushed towards it and pushed into it, not in the way that Zuckerberg tells you he's going to do it when he looks in his fancy mirror and it shows his avatar, but through small interactions online and, like you said, your virtual brunch and meeting up with your mates for a night out online on Zoom. That is Web 3.0. That is the metaverse. You're already living in it.
So, Jean, isn't it fantastic? I could meet my friends in Mexico and go and see an exhibition in the metaverse. I could go to a spoken word event with my sister who doesn't live in the same country. You know, it could make arts and culture much more accessible. So what's not to love?
I think we need to take the best of that, and what you're talking about is, not what I thought when I saw Mark Zuckerberg in that very Minecrafty type video. And I'm guessing we're there already. If it makes us more inclusive, if we embrace diversity through it, if we make a more equitable world, if we share knowledge and information, I'm all for it. I love augmented reality because I've tried that out with the glasses, and it actually brings up information in real life. So, if I'm meeting yourself, it will tell me when I last met you, who the names of your children, that sort of thing. And I would find that really, really useful at the age of 54. So technology, meaningful use, I think, fantastic.
Yeah, and that is what we're going to see. I think we're going to see companies enhance real life with Web 3.0. It's going to be a mesh. I don't think it's going to be a point where we step into a digital world. It's going to be a layer over the life that we lead at the moment. And like you're saying, in terms of like equality, I think we are at one of these paradigm shifts right now that we don't see very often. We've seen it at Web 1.0, the emergence of sharing information, and you could go on and suddenly you could find out where the nearest cafe was without having to open a big yellow book. Oh my God. And then Web 2.0, social media rolls around. We get to communicate with people, and Web 3.0 is how do we take those interactions and digitize them and kind of mesh the two together. But I think we're at an amazing stage right now, and I think Gen Z have been so great in shaping us and shaping these conversations that we're having and accelerating them forward. A conversation about equality that would have taken us 30 years to overcome, they do in 30 days. They take a movement, the movement starts on a Monday, and by the Friday it's hit critical mass, and every single person has looked at it, digested the facts, and understood that this is something that we need to change. Is that Me Too? Is that environmental crisis? Is that gender equality, racial equality? Like, kids these days are brought up and they'll read the back of a shampoo packet and they'll say, I'm not using that, it's got palm oil in it. You know what I mean? Like, my 10-year-old brother is like more environmentally aware than like anyone. You know what I mean? So they just understand things in a very different way that we do. But I think it's time for us now, like designers, artists, to make sure that we are making decisions that are going to create the future that we want. I mean, I'm a brand strategist. Companies will come to me and they'll say, what should we do? How can we make money? And it's, unfortunately, it's up to people like me to say to them, okay, well, we're the steer then. You have to have gender representation. You have to have racial representation. You have to make sure that you're pushing to be as sustainable as possible. And they'll fight us on every one of them. What's the why? Why? How much money is it going to make us? Can you show us what the bottom line is? How much is the market cap within that market if we suddenly start aiming at like kind of an Asian demographic that we'd never gone for before? But now we need to stand up and say that you need to do this because it's right, not just for the commerce at the end of it. And I think the last 2 years has actually kind of given that nudge that we can have those conversations and people now listen, whereas they used to just stonewall you and say, no, like, show me how much money it's going to put in my bank, or it's not happening. We can now have a conversation of, you need to do this just because it's right, or if you don't, someone's going to, that's the scariest term of all, someone will cancel you.
But see, and this is going to be my final questions before the Q&A, so prepare your questions if you have any, so those in the room and those online. Some argue that the idea of Metaverse is antithetic with creativity because people think that we are on the brink of closing the free internet. We are being stuck with a single company that controls what happens in the digital world. So, I mean, do you think it's really a great place to be as a creative, John?
I think my whole creative knowledge comes from 9 years working, 7 of which have been very interactive. Mm-hmm. So I'm on the interactive, what we'd call analog side, really. Getting into the studios, going to events, that buzz, the ideas you get talking in a corridor, and that I think would be difficult to replicate. Again, I go back to the point that it's choosing the best technology, the best of the technology, the best of the Zooming that we do, the best methods that we've developed over the last 2 years and holding on to those. And amazing how it's opening up the world for so many people as well. But you know, I'm desperate to get back to just a little bit of normality and seeing people. And it's, you know, tonight's fairly weird being in a room with so many people, but it's also wonderful. So it's more of this, please, with a little dash of digital.
Belocine, do you miss this like human connection, the fact of having people in the same room as you? Are you looking forward to the future, really, the technological future for you as a fashion designer?
I do miss the human interaction, and it is good to be kind of back to normal and seeing more and more people. For example, last year we had a fashion show in Dundee with Scotland Redesign, and to see people, to see the models wearing my clothes, like for real, it was really good to see. So this is something that I would not trade for anything. As I said before, I think I want to join both of them, technology and normal. Use the technology as a tool that helps me for my business and help me promote my business and everything that I believe in, but it will not be my main goal or my main tool. It's just one tool in the box.
Barrington?
Yeah, I would agree. And what you were saying about kind of, are we going to lose the free internet and become a kind of one internet state? I mean, we've almost seen it before, you know, in the 90s, AOL almost owned the internet. You didn't like go on the internet, you went like on AOL and your friends lived there and they gave you the news and everything, and that kind of broke down. And then Mark Zuckerberg's been trying to do the same again, a very clever tactical play by renaming Facebook, Instagram group to Meta to give the impression that he owns the Metaverse, but the Metaverse can't be owned. It's a decentralized place. That's why your money exists on the blockchain, which is a decentralized bank. Companies that are actually kind of leading the way right now in the Metaverse are places like Decentraland, which is like one of those interactive lands that you can go in and walk about and display your NFTs and kind of clothe your avatar. You can make your digital self, but it's never going to overtake real life. But we've seen this all the time, do you know what I mean? Like, when the internet came out, like the Y2K bug, like people were decrying that the iPad would be the end of the sketchbook. I'm sure you can tell me that that's not happened. Digital painting has never overtaken painting and art. It has allowed people to access it, people that maybe don't have thousands of pounds to go and spend on oil paintings and don't have 14 foot in their room to string up a canvas. It's let them get in and get creative, and iPhones have allowed young creators to become photographers and dip their foot into videography and content creating and video editing. But it's never going to supersede real life. You can't take humanity away from people. At the end of the day, people will always veer towards authentic human connection. So yeah, you might go on and rather than speaking to your friend on Instagram, you might log into whatever amazing Web 3.0 app is going to come out and blow them all out the water, but you're probably still going to go and meet your friends at the weekend for a pint. I just don't think that's going to change. So I think it's a really exciting time that we're coming, and we need to be careful with it and we need to steer it and make sure that we're doing the right things with it. But I don't think we're ever going to lose genuine human connection, because it's just what the soul wants at the end of the day, isn't it?
That is a wonderful conclusion before our questions from the public. Does anyone want to ask anything? Yes, someone.
The one thing that appears to be missing is critical thinking. A lot of this is, well, I'll speak more as an older person who we all tend to be marginalised. But the reality, I mean, a case in point recently, thousands of older people were decanted into nursing homes. Sadly, many died. But many people were already in homes. For the families, it was great, you might say, someone on an iPad, but it didn't beat a good hug and tears when you were the physical person. And what my real concern about a lot of this is the dissemination of what that old Trump would class as fake news. How do you know the validity and the verification of a lot of what you're going to see? Because that we see with the anti-vaxxers now, how groups of people can become a rabble and worse through using online tools. And it doesn't matter what you do, or whoever goes and says this is not true, they believe it to be true. how are you going to combat that? Otherwise, you could have like a worm going through this that's going to contaminate the good because of the bad.
I mean, I can only speak personally, but I don't think things like the Daily Mail and the Daily Express are my sort of favourite things, and they're certainly old school. So I think what's going to happen is maybe some sort of democratisation of news, where there's some new filters, the technology puts the news through, and we finally sort of people, you know, when you go online, you already see the news that most people are reading. And when I go to search on Google, it will come up with the top Google results, and it's quite interesting looking to see what people are actually looking at. So I think we're entering a new phase, and we shouldn't be afraid of that. I don't think what comes out the mainstream news outlets that have been here, the TV and the newspapers for longer, is necessarily the truth, or what perhaps it's filtered in ways that the internet allows us to, the information to flow more freely. So I've got a lot of hope that the new technology and the metaverse and the rest will actually help us connect more. And we are getting siloed because of the algorithms, but I think, you know, there's a lot of hope there that we're going to see democratization of news and finally be able to sort of get hold of all the information we want rather than what's being fed to us.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, and I would say that it would be entirely wrong to think that kind of newer forms of media are less kind of, I don't know, less attuned to critical thinking. If anything, that's where more critical thinking happens. If you look back 2 or 3 generations, you were being fed all your news by 2 or 3 outlets. Going back long enough, and you were being fed it all by 1 or 2 channels and a couple of newspapers who were owned by rich people. It was all self-serving. So, and the only people that you had around you in your space for critical thinking were people that you could physically get to. We now have an open universe where you can hear all different types of people's opinions and truths. And yeah, there will be opinions that you don't agree with, and things like anti-vax news will kind of grow like wildfire, but you also have access to more truth than ever before. And I think it's down to individual people to kind of make up their mind at what they believe in. And I think now there probably is more freedom available to believe and look and digest and take in what you want than ever before.
Belocine, do you want to add anything?
Honestly, I agree with the gentlemen. I think that before it was the same. You couldn't really know the truth, or you can. There were always people who could double check the information, and I think it's a personal job to do that if you want to be sure of what you are consuming. So I think that you should be the one who double check and confirms the information that you get.
Any other question? Yes, the lady at the back.
I might take my mask off for a minute so that I can be heard. I took some notes because there's so much in what you all said tonight, so thank you very much for that. And every time any one of you opens your mouth, I'm like, yes, but... and it's like my ideas are firing off. But there's something, I think, picking up on the sustainability and technology angle, which is, I think, quite interesting. And it's maybe also looking at the local economy and local well-being economy agenda. So maybe picking up on what you were saying. Sorry, I didn't catch your name, the lady in the middle.
Thank you. Belocine.
So I think you said that during the lockdown, you felt that people in your own local community were wanting to support you, turned to local businesses and were wanting to support you. And then at the same time, we talked about the use of technology to open up your market and indeed everyone's ability to buy. And we've seen a massive, massive rise in online shopping. Sadly, mainly from one particular outlet that will remain nameless. At huge cost, both to all sorts of other businesses, but also huge environmental cost and huge social cost. So I'm just trying to make sense of, where's the localism and how's the technology best harnessed to really hone in on that rather than get siphoned off into something that is actually quite detrimental. And there would be a lot more to say about all of this, but that's trying to catch it in a nutshell.
So for myself, what helped also about the local community was actually technologies and social media, because people on my found me on social media, and they found that I was based in Ayr, I was based in Scotland, and there were more groups appearing on Facebook and on Instagram. So I was adding more and more people in my network. So it was through those social media. And then I personally want to use material from the local market, and I live in Ayr, I live in Scotland, so when people buy from me, I also participate in the economy. So I think that it all goes hand in hand, because if there weren't technologies, people would not know about me, because I am just based in Ayr. And I have friends, also the word of mouth still is the biggest market tool. My friends speak about me and other people speak about me, and this is also how the local community grows.
Can I follow on that? Yeah, I think maybe that question kind of spans so many different areas and so many different industries that it's hard to pin it down, because Pretty Little Thing and Boohoo and stuff are probably not pushing that local market, local agenda. So yeah, it's taken that. What were things that were amazing at that time for smaller communities, smaller makers and creators and businesses, and were they able to harness it and kind of push it on? And I think a lot of them were, and probably boosted their business. But in reality, a lot of us are going to return to the way that we used to consume and the way that we look at media and how we want to purchase. It's just kind of human nature, really, isn't it? Not much changed there. And it's these kind of massive companies that really had the resources to take what was happening there and very quickly and with a lot of agility kind of pivot their marketing strategies to make sure that they were capitalizing on that, and that they were then able to retain that kind of post-pandemic. And now that's not something that a small home creative working in a living room is going to be able to do. So yeah, it has seemed like it's died off, but you will probably still feel the benefits of what happened over those 2 years now, because you have a community around you.
Yes. John?
I think as well it's going to have a knock-on effect in the physical real world as well, because we're seeing so many of the big chain stores going and empty high streets. And I think high streets going to have to reinvent themselves with bespoke, I can see fashion designers leaving art school and going, at the moment they're lucky if they go and be a buyer at H&M. They might just end up working on the floor of H&M just to be close to the fashion industry. But I think what a lot of them would like to do is run their own businesses on the high street. So I'm hoping we'll go back to when I was really young, when we'd have lots of independent shops in the high street, and a place where you can be social. And you can kind of see it happening already with more pedestrianisation going on, cars being banned from the city centre. And there's real benefits, I think, to actually thinking about technology. Again, good use of technology in these shops, 3D printing. So you go into a shop, you get something that's made absolutely bespoke for you from the designer. It gets printed there, and when you're finished, you go back and get it recycled in that same shop. So that, for me, becomes a beautiful thing, because you start thinking, well, our factories in places, I've seen them in Sri Lanka and Africa and Southeast Asia, is that the best use of their country's time, actually making my stuff for me to sell in Primark? And I think that we need that reorganization of the world economy, so those countries are actually reorientating their economy so it benefits the country and that area. And that would in turn, strangely, benefit our high streets, because we're making more of our stuff here. We're not transporting it. We don't need motorways. We don't need trucks. We don't need container ships. And that's the beautiful thing, I think, about sustainability and environmentalism and social justice. It starts coming all together. And just the act of selling more clothes online suddenly, for me, becomes more beautiful, small vendor type high streets and re-energized, economies in the global south. So yeah, that's beauty for me.
Yeah, that's definitely something we're going to see. I mean, working with like Flannels Group, Nike and stuff like that at the moment, and we're seeing a huge change towards experiential retail. So it's now not going to be about going into a shop and picking up the size that you want and walking out with it, or kind of browsing 1,000 racks in Primark. It's now like, if you look at Times Square or Oxford Circus, you go down there, you go into the Nike store, you pick up a t-shirt, you go up into the top floor, and there's usually a guy in there sitting with a paintbrush, or maybe he's got patches, And you can pick any item you want. So you go and pick up your bomber jacket, you take it upstairs, and you pick your 5 kind of patches that you want on it. You give them your name, and you sit and you watch them stitch the patches that you wanted onto your sleeves. They they paint your name onto the back, and you walk away with not just an item of clothing, but you've had an experience. And there is this kind of amazing middle ground that is going to decimate, and companies like Pretty Little Thing and Boohoo and all these names who are killing the planet cannot operate in that space. It will belong to like amazing agile companies that want to do creative things, and kind of your upper echelons of people creating beautiful couture fashion where you walk into a shop and there's just 5 amazing gowns there. And then on the flip side of that, you will also have your amazing like local companies, and we're talking to so many amazing small companies right now setting up experiential concept stores where you go in and maybe they only have their product line out, and you try it on, you interact with it, and then you place an order and you go home and it turns up at your door the next day. And I think that is going to make that lovely kind of tactile shift towards community again.
I completely agree if I can add something, because this is something I see with my own customers as well. The fact that I add handwritten notes, and the fact that I can adjust the clothes to their own size, those things you cannot get it from fast fashion brands because it's so massive, but they have this proximity with me, and this is really interesting, and I can see that they appreciate that too. So yeah, I wanted to add that.
I know time flies, it's already 7:15, but do we have time for one last question? The floor is yours. Yeah. Do you want to start, John?
It's a nice and simple one. Thank you. I think they're going to do it. The generation now who's under 25, they're just going to get on with it. And the people I work with most, who get it most and are going to do the most about it, are at that age group. So all I can do really is address my own peer group. I think that's really important. So if there's people who look and sound like me who are blocking things, then I'll do my best to work a way around that and give space. So I go back to the idea that art schools, universities still aren't as diverse as they could be, and I think what really angers me sometimes is that somewhere in the East End of Glasgow there's an amazing interior designer who's never going to be an interior designer, and you could say that for almost any spot on earth. So it's that waste of potential that makes me angry and wants to make us more diverse. So we go out, we work with the local schools, we try and get a lot of international students in, and we address it that way, but we can always do more. So I think that diversity and that strength of the younger generation are actually going to make it happen, and I'm not going to have much to do with it. I'm just trying to vaguely stay out the way and help make it happen in some way.
Belocine?
For me, I think it will all happen with communication. I think that we need to speak our truth, and I also think that people need to listen, not listen to reply, but listen to actually understand what's going on, and this is how you can learn. And I think that we can all learn from each other if we are willing to, but if you already have an opinion about it, and if you already don't want to, just want to keep what you think as the truth, we won't go anywhere. I think it's all in speaking. Whatever the subject is, we need to communicate and talk to each other. That's how you can educate yourself and also educate others about your own issues or whatever you want to talk about.
And Barrington, to close the evening.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with what John said. I think we just need to get out of the way. I think even At 30 years old, I'm like, I'm too awake. My
I feel you.
yeah, that's all. Yeah, my design intern is 19, and I speak to her, and she's using language that like I'd be impressed if I heard a 45-year-old art lecturer talk about. Do you know what I mean? They understand and they comprehend design and art and creativity in a way that we just can't keep up with. And I think we just need to do what we can, use our expertise and the kind of the experience that we've built to help kind of create these inroads for them. And I do think we just need to do everything that we can to kind of stop roadblocking anything. And I would massively disagree with international students because they're the most high-paying students in the whole world. So yeah, I think it's just about getting out of the way and just letting good things happen now and being there to help. Like when movements like the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter movement come up, they would have been so much less effective if people hadn't pitched in, but they were great because people were getting behind them, people were painting murals, people were setting up Zooms, people were activating their local community, and we need to just make sure that we're trying to do that on an ongoing basis just to build a better future. If someone comes to me and says, can you throw a panel talk to kind of 50 young black kids to help them get on the career ladder, I just need to say yes. And not ask them any questions, just make it happen. And I think if everyone in a position of power can do that, we'll build a really great creative future together.
All right, I think this is us for tonight. Thank you all so much for all your thoughts, your insight. It was really a fascinating, thought-provoking conversation. Thank you, all of you, also so much for coming and staying for the whole conversation. Thank you to all the people online. Thank you to the French Institute, and I wish you a very good evening. Merci beaucoup.